something about light that brings out really good things in composers and musicians. It was pretty easy to pick music this week because people are drawn to the light. I was thinking, as I was putting together this sermon, I was thinking, well, I bet it'll be cloudy. Thank you, June gloom. But we know, right? By 2 o'clock today, the sun will be out. And we can't wait. One of my favorite things to do is on a stormy day to look out toward Catalina and look for that beam of light. Have you ever seen it when you look out over the ocean and there's all these dark storm clouds and then there's one beam of light? I can stare at that beam all day long. There's a great scene in Bridge to Terabithia, which you probably heard me talk about before, one of my favorite childhood novels. Leslie is going to church with Jess. Jess comes from some kind of Bible church background, and he's not a big fan of church, but Leslie's never been, so she's like, I want to go. You're like, yeah, right. He's a little scared of church because his preacher preaches fire and brimstone, so I try not to do that, although maybe today. But he's also pretty bored with church. Anybody ever had that experience? Not here, of course, but, other places, yeah. So she's kind of bored too, except she sees this beam of light coming in through the window, and she starts playing with her compact, her mirror, and she catches it, and the beam, great filmmaking, the beam catches right on the mirror, and she and Jess see the holiness in that moment. There's a beauty to light that helps us experience God in ways that are completely different than words or thoughts. There's just an experience when we're drawn to the stars or the moon or the sun or even just a beautiful lit stained glass window. Something about light just draws us in. So it's no wonder that Jesus uses this imagery, not just to talk about himself, but about who he calls us to be. You are the light of the world. You, and you, and you, and you, and you, yeah, even you, yeah. You are the salt of the earth. Barbara's not the only spicy one here. We're all supposed to be salty. We're all supposed to be spicy. I love what you said, Barbara. Whatever your spice is, be the fullness of your light, the fullness of your spice. I've often said if I were going to write an inspirational book, I would call it Be Salty. Be salty, because it would catch your attention, right? What does that mean? I don't think it means pirate salty, although they're pretty salty. I think it means exactly what Barbara said in the children's message, bringing the fullness of who you are to the world, to every encounter. Because each of us has a little piece of the divine light within us. And we got to capture it with that mirror, right? Look at yourself and say, I am the light of the world. I better get to work. The world's a pretty gloomy place. And the sun doesn't always come out at 2 o'clock for many people. Many people live in the shadows all the time. And you might be the only light they see. Eugene Peterson, in his message paraphrase, says it this way. I love these. Let me tell you why you are here. You're here to be salt seasoning that brings out the God flavors of this earth. Salt seasoning to bring out the God flavors. Wow. If you lose your saltiness, how will people taste godliness? You've lost your usefulness and will end up in the garbage. I don't want to end up in the garbage, do you? I want to be salty like Barbara. I want people to go, you're spicy, Mary. Even if they don't mean it as a compliment, I'm okay with that. VJ's grandmother had one spice. Guess what it was? Salt, right? That generation. That was the spice of the day. And Grandpa, when he was a young retiree, had high blood pressure. And the doctor said, Anne, you've got to cut back on Homer's salt. So she went completely cold turkey. And that Sunday, she made his favorite meal, He had patiently endured it for 5 days. On Sunday, when she made his favorite meal, he sat back in his chair and said, Anne, this used to be my favorite meal, but it has no flavor. She had to add a little bit more salt back in, right? Because that was her only spice. Well, guess what? Salt isn't our only spice. Each of you are a different kind of salt. You might be the Himalayan salt, like our candles on the altar. You might be, I don't know, the Morton salt, the table salt, refined salt. I don't know, there's a million different kinds of salt, and of course there's a million different kinds of spices. But let's not hide our salt, lest somebody like Homer says, this world has no flavor. My life has no light. When we neglect to be the light, when we don't spice things up, a part of God's work is not getting done. A little bit of God's presence isn't present in the world. Imagine your presence is the little bit of God's presence that the world needs. It's going to be different for each of us, but essential for every single one of us. So be salty. Every single one of you. The world and this church needs each and every person to be a part of the spice cabinet that makes the world a better place. Eugene Peterson goes on to talk about us as light bearers. Maybe that's easier than thinking just being light. He says, here's another way to put it. You're here to be light, bringing out the God colors in the world. All of the vibrancy of God's creation is only seen if every single one of us shines. In whatever color our light is, in whatever variety our light is, be the light you're meant to be. Not somebody else's light. I'm never going to be Megan. Megan's never going to be me. I'm certainly not going to be Ed. Ed's not going to be me. And that's beautiful because our different lights bring out different God colors in the world. Our different spices bring out different God flavors in the world. And they all reflect a way of moving toward God's kingdom of justice and love and mercy. Imagine, Jesus is calling you. You didn't have to be at that Sermon on the Mount 2,000 years ago. Right here, right now, Jesus is saying to you, you are the light of the world. You are the salt of the earth. I'm still saying, I think he paraphrased it, be salty. Be spicy. Bring your fullness into this. Earlier this week, I was talking with a church leader, and they were a little discouraged. And they said to me, why don't more people step up when things need to be done? And a lot of people do step up. And I reminded them, well, a lot of people do step up. And they were like, yeah, but there's this and this and this. And I said, they weren't wrong. And I said, yeah, that's a good point. And I don't know why people hesitate to step up. I don't know why people hesitate to shine our light. But there are a lot of reasons behind that. I hear the excuses. Oh, I'm too busy. Oh, I'm not good enough. Oh, I don't have any training. I don't possibly have enough time. I've already done my part. I don't have enough money. Whatever. I hear all the excuses. But I wonder sometimes if behind the excuse isn't a deeper fear. Maybe the excuses are just hiding our fear to be the light. Being a light means being seen. Being spicy means changing things. It's not always easy, is it, Barbara, when somebody says to you, you're kind of spicy. Some days we laugh about that, but some days it kind of hurts our feeling, and I think, well, maybe I'll shrink back. Marianne Williamson has this fantastic quote. If you're a fan of hers, I'm sure you know it. I'm going to read it in its fullness, because I think it gets to why sometimes we don't shine. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. What did Barbara say? Don't hide it under a bushel basket. No. Williamson goes on. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine, as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in every one of us. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. Imagine, as you let your light shine, as you let your spice come to its fullness of flavors, you're giving permission for others to let their light shine, to let their spice make the world a better place. And wow, what a great contagion to have. More light, more spice. Jesus counts on us to shine here with each other, and then to shine beyond the walls of this church, to shine so brightly that even on a dull gray morning, people sense the sun behind the clouds. That even in the deepest of despair, they sense the hope beaming through. That in the dullest of days, they sense the possibility of new beginnings because you shine your light, because you spice things up. My friends, be salty. I am so thankful for the many, many ways in which many of you are salty. How many of you are working at Vacation Church Camp this summer? Let me see. Who's working vacation? Salty. Just saying. How many of you serve on a church committee? How many of you work in behind the scenes in the church? Look at that. Light bearers. There they are. All right. How many of you help a neighbor whenever they're in trouble or visit an older person who's lonely? Spicy. Just saying. Who's here ever gone on a mission trip or wants to go on a mission trip? Oh, yeah, salt and light. Well done. This is what it is to walk the talk, to be light bearers, to be salty, to be spicy. And that's how Jesus wants us to be. It's how he transformed first century Palestine, how Judaism bled into a new version called Christianity because he wanted to wake people up. He was living in a community that had gotten kind of stale. It was stuck in the rules, and they had forgotten to be light. The Hebrew people were first called to be a light to the nations. And Jesus now calls us to be a light to the world, to be salty. The world doesn't need more preachers just sitting up here talking about it. The world needs people doing something about it. The world doesn't need Christians who sit around and complain about the demise of the church. The world needs Christians who are bringing the church out into the world with our light and our love, with our salty spiciness. The world doesn't need followers of Christ who wait for somebody else to bring Christ to the world. The world needs followers of Christ who bring Christ to every encounter. Jesus calls us to be salt and light because Jesus knew then and knows now. The world is a dim place. The world is a dull place without God's flavors and God's colors. So be light bearers, be salty, be spicy. And if you're nervous about it, Teacher Barbara can tell you how. It's an opportunity to be the best of our possible selves. Peterson puts it this way at the end of his scripture translation. Here's another way to put it. You're here to be light, bringing out the God colors in the world, and God is not a secret to be kept. We're going public with this, as public as a city on a hill. Jesus says to you, if I make you light bearers, you don't think I'm going to hide you under a bucket, do you? I'm putting you on a light stand. Jesus putting us on a light stand. I'm going to put you up there on that hilltop. And you know what? We are on a hilltop. So shine. Shine, my friends. Shine so brightly that it makes people stand up and take notice. Be so salty that people find the God flavor in you. And as a reminder, we're going to give you some salty chocolate at the end of the day. So you won't forget. Be salt. Be light. The world needs our flavors. Amen.